A confidential royal strategy session was meant to be just another meeting. But within minutes, Princess Anne stood up, walked out, and left stunned silence in her wake. The reason? Camilla crossed a line, and not just any line. She openly challenged Catherine's role in the monarchy, triggering the most public royal fracture since Megxit. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. What was intended as a quiet internal discussion turned into an emotional standoff between the old guard and the emerging voice of modern royalty. The meeting had been scheduled to address ceremonial responsibilities ahead of the new season of royal duties, a relatively routine agenda item, but tensions were already simmering beneath the surface. Public opinion had recently rallied behind Catherine following a particularly moving appearance, with media headlines proclaiming her the nation's unshakable center. That shift in tone had not gone unnoticed, especially not by Camilla, whose role as queen consort has always existed in a delicate balance between tradition, duty, and public skepticism. Sources inside the palace reveal that the queen consort, flanked by two of her most trusted advisors, raised the question of whether Catherine's presence at state events had become, in her words, excessive and visibly eclipsing the sovereign's spotlight. Those in the room recall the atmosphere changing instantly. Anne's eyes narrowing, her posture shifting. When Camilla pressed the issue further, questioning whether Catherine's increasing visibility might confuse the line of royal hierarchy, Princess Anne abruptly stood, her face flushed not with confusion, but with controlled fury. "Enough," she reportedly said, before walking out of the room, leaving even senior aides speechless. Royal protocol dictates that no one leaves such meetings without signaling permission. For Anne to break that code was a gesture loud enough to echo through every wing of the palace, and it wasn't just the action, it was who took it. Anne, the unflinching backbone of the firm, known for her relentless work ethic and her disdain for spectacle, had just made the most public private statement of her life. In the aftermath, chaos reigned behind the scenes. Staffers scrambled to contain leaks, while courtiers whispered of a deepening divide that could no longer be ignored. It wasn't a moment of tension. It was a rupture. And insiders now admit it was the moment the palace could no longer pretend that Catherine's rise and Camilla's resistance weren't reshaping the monarchy from the inside out. But this wasn't just about a single meeting. It was the culmination of years of silent power shifts that finally erupted into the light. It was inevitable. Two women, two paths to power, and a monarchy only wide enough for one queen figure in the public eye. Behind closed doors, Camilla has long viewed Catherine's growing popularity as a direct threat, and now that tension has reached boiling point. For years, Camilla played the long game, quiet, steady, carefully reshaping her image in the public imagination from controversial consort to dutiful queen. But what she hadn't anticipated was the magnetic force of Catherine's rise. Not just in charm, but in strategy. While Camilla relied on palace machinery, Catherine mastered public sentiment, showing a softer strength that felt deeply modern. And that shift didn't go unnoticed. Camilla's team, already on edge due to the king's waning health, reportedly grew irritated at Catherine's consistent PR wins. Those subtle, powerful moments where the Princess of Wales emerged not only beloved, but essential. Sources reveal that Camilla's advisors attempted to restructure several ceremonial engagements, subtly adjusting spotlight angles to refocus public attention. But even then, Catherine, always poised, never once pushed back. Her silence wasn't submission, it was calculation, and that unshakable grace only deepened the divide. Behind that calm exterior was an undeniable truth. Her bond with William, now the visible heart of the monarchy, gave her a kind of unspoken authority, the sort that doesn't need to be declared to be felt. Insiders speak of an invisible Cold War, no shouting, no scandal, just a simmering unease stretching from Kensington to Clarence House. Every smile scrutinized, every seating arrangement analyzed. Camilla, long uncomfortable with the idea of being overshadowed, found herself increasingly isolated in her role. And with King Charles's health casting a long shadow over the palace, that isolation turned into desperation. What once felt like her earned space was now under quiet siege. But Catherine never needed to raise her voice. Her presence alone, unshakable, maternal, quietly regal, shifted the balance of power in rooms where hierarchy had always spoken louder than merit. It wasn't loud, it wasn't obvious, but it was everywhere. The monarchy was changing, and Camilla could feel it. Former courtiers have hinted that Camilla had hoped for a smoother transition, one where her authority would go unchallenged and her image would rise without competition. But Catherine's steady evolution into the people's queen-in-waiting disrupted every blueprint. Behind the scenes, the clash grew more visible to insiders, two women navigating a house that had rarely accommodated more than one powerful female at a time. But while Camilla eyed Catherine with suspicion, she forgot one key player. Anne, the monarch's most unwavering defender, wasn't about to let history repeat itself. Anne has always been the monarchy's silent force, steadfast, disciplined, and fiercely loyal. So when she rose from her chair and exited the room, it wasn't impulsive. It was a statement, and it revealed just how deeply she values Catherine's role in the institution. For decades, Princess Anne has embodied the unwavering backbone of royal duty, never asking for applause, never needing the spotlight. But make no mistake, behind her measured silence lies a fierce guardian of tradition and stability. So, when whispers emerged of Anne and Catherine sharing a private, behind-the-scenes alliance, few in the palace were surprised. Anne, who once cut through royal red tape with surgical precision, saw something in Catherine early on, an innate understanding of the weight of duty. In those formative years, when Catherine first joined the royal fold, it was Anne who quietly mentored her, offering guidance not in public, but in quiet conversations after engagements, in notes left behind at residences, in small acts of sisterhood rarely seen by the public eye. And over time, that unspoken bond evolved into a partnership grounded in mutual respect. Anne is said to view Catherine not only as the future queen, but as the institution's moral anchor, a modern woman who embraced tradition, not because she had to, but because she chose to. And that choice meant everything to Anne. So when Camilla began to edge into spaces Anne believed Catherine had rightfully earned, the frustration was palpable. Multiple palace insiders have spoken of Anne's growing concern over Camilla's increasingly interventionist behavior, her suggestions, her positioning, her desire to reshape ceremonial roles under the guise of modernization. But in Anne's eyes, this wasn't innovation, it was interference. The final straw, sources say, came when Anne overheard Camilla's veiled suggestion that Catherine's presence might need to be recalibrated for balance. That word recalibrated sent a chill through the room. For Anne, it wasn't about favoritism. It was about fairness, and about safeguarding a future she had quietly helped build. She carries it with grace. And that's rarer than anyone admits. In the days following her dramatic walkout, Anne reportedly refused all direct communication with Camilla. No calls, no notes, not even the customary morning briefing exchanges. It was a silent protest wrapped in royal etiquette, but its message was deafening. If there was a line to be drawn in the sand, Anne had drawn it. Not with rage, but with resolve. And the monarchy was forced to take notice. But if Anne's walkout was symbolic, what followed from Charles was strategic, an unexpected pivot that changed the palace's trajectory overnight. For King Charles, loyalty is complicated. Bound to Camilla by love, but tied to Catherine by public duty, he found himself caught in a storm he could no longer ignore. And with Anne making her stance clear, silence was no longer an option. The monarchy thrives on carefully curated unity, and for decades, Charles had walked the tightrope between personal allegiance and public responsibility. But the tremors triggered by Camilla's remarks and Anne's blistering response had shaken even the firmest pillars of the palace. Behind closed doors, pressure mounted for the king to issue a unifying statement, something to cool the rising tensions and stabilize the narrative before it exploded beyond control. Yet days passed and no word came. Courtiers whispered of indecision, of private meetings held late into the night. Charles, sources say, met separately with both Camilla and Anne tense, high-stakes conversations where no one backed down. Anne reiterated her position with clipped precision, while Camilla defended her views, painting herself as the misunderstood protector of royal order. In what insiders described as the most direct conversation between father and son in recent memory, William allegedly said, "This could undo everything. We either steady this ship now, or we sink." With every day of silence, public curiosity grew louder. Headlines speculated on the rift, while public opinion firmly rallied behind Catherine. Charles, sensing the crown's foundations subtly shifting beneath him, quietly cancelled 2 scheduled public appearances, citing health fatigue, though many believe it was a calculated pause for strategic recalibration. Behind palace walls, the message was clear. The era of passive neutrality had expired. What was at stake wasn't just reputation, it was the continuity of the monarchy itself. Catherine represented not only grace and public poise, but the embodiment of generational transition. Her rise wasn't sudden. It had been years in the making, shaped by restraint, reliability, and an unspoken contract with the people. And for Charles, the decision was becoming less about personalities and more about preservation. The Queen Consort, despite her title, had struggled to capture the full warmth of the public. Catherine, on the other hand, had effortlessly woven herself into the nation's emotional fabric. So, when the decision finally came, it was discreet but decisive. Catherine's role would not only remain intact, it would expand. Additional ceremonial responsibilities, more visibility at future state events, and a quiet restructuring of palace communications to bolster her image. No press release, no grand declarations, just movement intentional, irreversible. But even before the dust could settle, an unsettling ripple began coursing through the palace rumour mill. Whispers that Camilla's inner circle, stung by this pivot, wasn't ready to surrender influence just yet. But before any statement could be made, whispers began to spread. Catherine herself had been warned that Camilla's inner circle was planning something more. It was a routine internal document, never meant to leave palace walls. But when a draft memo proposing a reduction of Catherine's state appearances was leaked, the game changed, and public outrage exploded. The memo, cold in tone and bureaucratic in language, outlined a quiet recalibration of ceremonial priorities. Camilla would be ushered into more central roles at upcoming events, while Catherine, beloved by the public and consistently ranked among the most trusted royals, would see her appearances scaled back. On paper, it was just strategy. In reality, it was a seismic insult. When that draft found its way into the hands of a well-connected journalist, the fallout was immediate. Within hours of publication, the palace's press office was flooded with inquiries. On social media, hashtags defending Catherine surged with an intensity not seen since the early days of her marriage. Queen in Waiting and the People's Princess-in-Law trended across platforms. But what truly deepened the scandal was the revelation of the source. Quiet whispers among insiders pointed to a senior aide long associated with Camilla's camp, someone viewed as a gatekeeper of influence. Within 48 hours, that aide had tendered their resignation. No statement, no farewell, just silence. Yet no one missed the implications. This wasn't a clerical mishap, it was a calculated maneuver that backfired spectacularly. William, typically reserved in public response, was said to be seething. Insiders claim he stormed into a private meeting with senior palace advisors and demanded answers. "This is not how we do things," he allegedly said. Not to her. The fury wasn't just about Catherine's treatment, it was about the shadow war that had suddenly become very, very visible. Behind palace gates, the fallout was felt like a tremor through the walls. Lines had been crossed, loyalties questioned, and strategies derailed. But the outside world had made its feelings known. Over 300,000 signatures flooded in within days, calling for Catherine to receive full recognition as the face of the modern monarchy. Editorials in once neutral outlets now took sides. Columnists demanded to know why the woman who carried herself with such dignity was being sidelined in favor of political optics. Even international media joined the chorus, portraying the palace as fractured and regressive. In trying to dilute her presence, the leaked memo had only strengthened her stature. The attempt to dim her light had done the opposite. It ignited a firestorm of loyalty that no royal strategist could have predicted. But as William moved to protect his wife's legacy in the public eye, he and Catherine both knew that this was no longer just about damage control. This was about what the monarchy would look like for the next 50 years. As chaos brewed outside the gates, inside the palace another storm was forming, one driven not by duty, but by legacy. He's always been the composed heir. But when it comes to Catherine, William's restraint cracked. Behind closed doors, he issued a rare royal ultimatum, and in doing so, proved just how deeply the rift had wounded the family. What had begun as subtle tension exploded into a thunderous declaration of allegiance. In a private confrontation that reportedly left the palace walls echoing, William faced both King Charles and Queen Camilla with a conviction that shook the air. "No one questions her place, not now, not ever," he was overheard saying, his voice cutting through decades of tradition and silence. It wasn't a plea. It was a line drawn in stone. For years, William had carried the burden of future king with grace and composure. But in that moment, it was no longer about legacy, it was about love, about loyalty, and about refusing to let history repeat itself. Catherine, ever diplomatic, had urged caution. She understood the weight of timing, the politics of optics, the palace's appetite for control, but William refused to let her bear the humiliation alone. His withdrawal from a key royal strategy session sent a thunderous signal. He would not entertain a vision of the monarchy that did not include Catherine standing at its centre. Reports suggest the confrontation left Camilla deeply shaken. For a queen consort already walking a tightrope of public acceptance, the emotional blow was not just personal, it was political. Insiders say she left the room in tears, stunned by the intensity of William's stance and the unmistakable shift in royal power dynamics. It was no longer just whispers behind tapestries. It was war within the walls. And yet, amidst the rising flames, Anne emerged as a voice not of neutrality but of quiet solidarity. Speaking privately to a longtime aide, she reportedly offered just 5 words that carried the weight of generations. "He's his mother's son, completely." It was a rare acknowledgement, not just of Diana's lingering influence, but of a torch being carried forward fiercely, unapologetically. The repercussions were immediate. Royal advisors scrambled to contain the optics, fearful of a growing perception that Camilla had overreached and that William had declared open rebellion. The family, once tightly choreographed, now appeared fractured by loyalty and pain. But the public, watching from outside the gilded gates, did not recoil. They leaned in, because what they saw was not a cold institution protecting its image, but a future king protecting his queen, a husband refusing to allow his wife to be sacrificed for the comfort of court tradition. And in doing so, William redefined what it meant to be royal, not by wearing a crown, but by shielding the one he loves from its sharpest edges. But while William defended his wife, it was Catherine's quiet actions that won the public and forced the monarchy to rethink everything. She didn't give a speech, she didn't release a statement. But her next move, subtle, powerful, and deeply symbolic, spoke louder than words. And the nation saw it for what it was, a quiet revolution. While the palace spun with whispers and fractured loyalties, Catherine chose a different battleground, one where dignity reigned over drama. Just days after the leak of the memo that threatened to sideline her from ceremonial duties, she appeared at a children's hospice event, alone. No senior royals flanking her, no forced smiles or orchestrated pageantry, just her, the children, and a cause that mattered. But beneath that calm surface, every detail was deliberate. Observers quickly noted the brooch pinned to her chest, one that once belonged to Queen Elizabeth II, worn by the late monarch at pivotal moments of national significance. A symbol of continuity, of legacy, of silent strength. And in wearing it, Catherine sent a thunderous message without ever raising her voice. She was not stepping back. She was stepping forward with the weight of history behind her. Her speech, though brief, carried more than compassion. When she spoke of unity through compassion and the importance of standing firm in moments of uncertainty, it was impossible to ignore the subtext. She was not merely addressing the room, she was speaking to a kingdom watching closely, looking for signs. Within hours, media headlines shifted. Phrases like "the people's queen in waiting" dominated the front pages. Even tabloids that had once scrutinized her every appearance now praised her poise, calling her a masterclass in modern monarchy. Public polls surged in her favor. Across social media, clips from her speech went viral, paired with words like grace, dignity, and unshakable. Even her most vocal critics, those who questioned her silence during the storm, began to admit she hadn't been silent at all. She had simply chosen her moment, and when it came, she moved not with noise, but with purpose. Insiders later revealed that this event had not been scheduled in advance. It was a last-minute addition, approved personally by Catherine, despite advisors urging her to lie low until tensions cooled. But she refused. She knew that retreat would only embolden those hoping to erase her. Instead, she reclaimed her space graciously, unflinchingly. And in doing so, she reminded the world that royalty is not only defined by bloodlines and titles, but by presence and principle. Behind palace doors, the ripple effect was immediate. Those who doubted her were forced to re-evaluate. Those who supported her found their courage renewed. And those caught in between began to shift their allegiance because Catherine had done the unthinkable. She had reshaped the narrative without ever confronting it head-on. She had, in essence, turned defense into dominance. But if Catherine had captured the nation, there was still one royal who had yet to weigh in, and what she did next stunned everyone. In a palace where appearances are everything, absence speaks volumes. As Camilla quietly withdrew from scheduled events, it was Anne who returned to applause, subtle nods of respect, and a role she never asked for but could no longer avoid. Her return wasn't loud or choreographed, but its impact was immediate. While Camilla's cancellations were officially blamed on health reasons, few inside the royal circle believed the timing was coincidental. Just days after public opinion had swung dramatically in Catherine's favor, and after William's private ultimatum, Camilla stepping back felt more like a retreat than a pause. And into that void stepped Princess Anne not to take sides, but to stabilize what had nearly fractured. Her public re-emergence began with a local veterans' memorial, a familiar duty she'd performed countless times. But this time, the atmosphere was different. The crowd response was warmer, more vocal, as if they understood the weight Anne now carried. And then came the moment that silenced even the most cynical observers. Anne and Catherine appeared together, side by side, not as royals forced into a photo opportunity, but as two women who had weathered a storm and come out stronger. For those watching closely, it was Anne's silent endorsement, a quiet reconciliation between tradition and change. Behind palace gates, the ripple effects intensified. Royal watchers and insiders alike began referring to Anne as the moral compass of the monarchy, not because she chased power, but because she had always stood for something deeper: duty without vanity, service without spectacle, and her alignment with Catherine signaled a recalibration. Even Charles couldn't ignore it. Internal briefings from senior advisors revealed a growing concern. Polling on public confidence in royal leadership had shifted dramatically. Stability metrics had spiked wherever Catherine's name was mentioned. Events featuring her drew record engagement. Meanwhile, Camilla's standing had dipped to its lowest since the early days of her royal role. In response, the palace began making quiet but significant changes. Ceremonial roles once floated between Camilla and Charles were now increasingly tied to William and Catherine. There were no grand announcements, no overt acknowledgements. But royal scheduling patterns told a different story. Behind closed doors, even the press team was instructed to center more media campaigns around Catherine's patronages. Anne, though uninterested in optics, seemed to sense what her presence now meant. She carried on with her engagements, just as she always had, but now with a renewed purpose. And the people noticed. Her understated return wasn't just an act of duty, it was a reset. A signal to the nation that while factions may form behind palace walls, the monarchy still had its anchors. And in those moments, it became clear. The narrative had turned, not with fury, not with vengeance, but with clarity. The crown was no longer just a lineage, it was a responsibility, and the people had chosen who they trusted to carry it. And as the institution recalibrates, one thing is now undeniable: the balance of power has shifted in ways no one predicted. This wasn't just a moment, it was a reckoning. The monarchy has long thrived on unspoken rules and unshakable hierarchy. But in just one meeting, one walkout, and one act of loyalty, the future took a turn no one was ready for. What unfolded behind the palace's closed doors didn't just shift protocol, it redefined the very soul of the institution. Princess Anne's walkout wasn't a rebellion, it was a reckoning of values, a thunderous silence that spoke for generations of royals who carried duty without demanding recognition. In standing up for Catherine, Anne didn't just reject Camilla's challenge, she signaled a new axis of power, rooted not in entitlement, but in earned trust. And that tremor echoed all the way to the throne. William, steadfast and steeled, had drawn a line. Catherine, through grace under fire, had quietly crossed it with the weight of the nation behind her. Now, the royal landscape was no longer defined by old power structures or ancestral privilege. It was being redrawn by conviction, loyalty, and unity. As the dust settled, palace insiders began to speak of a new term: the stabilizing trio. William, Anne, and Catherine, each a pillar in their own right now, stood at the heart of the monarchy's next chapter, not bound by proximity to the throne, but bound by a shared understanding of legacy. Behind closed doors, Camilla's influence was quietly reduced. Her inner circle's brief but chaotic attempt to shift ceremonial roles had backfired, damaging trust in ways that could not be undone. Without official statements, without confrontation, the palace had begun to reconfigure its power map. Charles, ever conscious of optics and legacy, reportedly began transitioning more ceremonial responsibilities to Catherine. What had once been a gradual process accelerated into a symbolic transfer. Events that had traditionally centered around Camilla now featured Catherine's poised presence instead. Polling across media platforms revealed a striking trend. Catherine's trust ratings had reached historic highs, rivaling even those once held by the late Queen Elizabeth II. Her image, once quietly admired, now stood as a beacon of resilience. Even among critics, there was acknowledgement. Catherine hadn't demanded the spotlight. She had earned it. Historians, watching the events unfold with mounting intrigue, began referring to this chapter as the first true matriarchal pivot in modern monarchy. A moment where royal women, once background fixtures in a male-dominated legacy, stepped forward, not in defiance, but in balance. Princess Anne's protest, Catherine's quiet resolve, and William's firm protection had carved out a new blueprint for the crown, one where the measure of royalty wasn't in title or tradition, but in temperament, sacrifice, and steadfast unity. And as history quietly rewrites itself inside palace walls, the message is clear. In this crown, loyalty and strength runs deeper than blood. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in the next one.